Good morning, ST, country chiefs of World Bank and Asian Development Bank, Chairman ICTA and DGTRC, Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen. I first thank Dysnomics team to make this post-budget seminar and inviting me to speak on the future. The future. I am speaking on a post-budget seminar after November 2013 speech on 2014 budget. So it's quite a long break. I wish to remember, however, Miss Lakmali Nanakara, illustrious professionals in our time, who initiated this kind of dialogue as early as 2004. And this is her legacy she left for us. The days, it was in Cinnamon Grand, and the place here, right here, was an army ground. Today, it is one gold face. Attraction next year, within next 6 months, will be the ADB annual conference here in Colombo. And further addition will be ICTA hotel complex right next to here, and Cinnamon Life right behind here, change in the landscape. So to me, it is a remarkable transformation in our country. The post-budget debate has begun. Parliament is debating. I saw outside discussions. I saw TV interviews. I saw ST and Governor sharing their views. I also saw the Honorable Minister explaining certain things, and also private sector chamber chiefs and others on the budget. To me, it is a very comprehensive budget, quite exhaustive and well thought out, and a new country-centric, new path, a path taking a break from a 70-year journey which has not produced us to change the landscape. However, since I have limited time and capacity, I will focus 3 important aspects in the budget that will make the transformation in this country. First is the macro fiscal direction, very fundamental for any sustainable development here. Number 2, external balance and reserve building path. We all know we don't have reserve. We all know we import more than we export. We all know we consume more than we save. So that balance sheet, although you may think your balance sheets are good and declare good profit, and the minister has identified some 65 or 70 people generating 2 billion rupee profit, taxable profit. When we add them together, it's not a good balance sheet. That's the story, whether it's budget or the external balance. So I want to talk on that. Then the real economy. I need to speak a little bit on that. The minister has gone into quite a detailed presentation on that. The budget. We all know 7 years we have run deficit budgets, except 1 or 2 years. If you take the central bank annual report, which published from 1950 to 2020 in their report, it's a deficit. First 10-15 years, it was 6-7%. Next phase, particularly after opening, it was 10-11%. And then in 90s, again back in 7-8%. Now again, back in 11. So it's a deficit. My fundamental question is, if a company ran 70 years like this, it would have got bankrupt. Not even in the books as a company. But this country has survived. Does it mean it's a sustainable fiscal path? No. Recognizing that in Parliament, in public, by the Minister of Finance is a great thing, because these issues have to be addressed. Then he is putting a plan. His plan is to bring this deficit to zero, technically zero. It cannot be done overnight. It cannot be done in 2-3 years, but it has to happen in 5 to 6 year time frame, steadily, solidly it has to happen. So therefore, he targets fiscal deficit to a very low level. And in fact, if that fiscal deficit is brought from current 11% to 8.8% next year, 3% reduction, then to 4.5% by 2024, and then after 27, zero fiscal deficit. That's the journey that if anybody wants to think of Malaysia, think of an advanced middle income country, if somebody wants to rethink, reimagine, renovate, that's the path to innovate. That's the message. Now, key to this is to gain control over expenditure first. If you are doing your business, you first look at your profit and loss account, balance sheets, and see what are the costs involved. Do we have control over this? So, gaining control over this, putting the expenditure to capital side, not to the consumption side, and also create savings within the budget, and then move on that path. Supplement that with some revenue, not with new taxes, new revenue, because we don't collect our revenue. That's a fact, and I will go into those. Now, public expenditure measures are quite strong. I salute the minister and the ST to identify specific measures that will bring the expenditure control. First is to do away with the 70-year-old annual warrant practice, where even when I was ST and present ST this year, enjoying an annual warrant, Parliament passed the budget, and then Minister give annual warrant. Ministry is just spent casually on an annual basis. Here it is replaced on a quarterly warrant basis. That is, ST will receive on January 1st, the first 3 months warrant, and he will pass that on to all spending agencies which compel. Don't think the whole year. This is your first quarter. Plan your procurement, plan your hiring, firing, redeployment, and plan your commitment accordingly. Next one is, however much we tried, there is no commitment control. And as a result, budget run onto arrears. Nobody can prevent because ST does not know. Sometimes secretaries do not know. Ministries, agencies have committed. Contracts have been awarded. Contracts have been signed. No checks and balance. So the next step is commitment control strictly in terms of financial regulation requirement. That's here. Third one is phasing out fiscal support, particularly current support, operational support for state enterprises. Many run very comfortably. Only chairman and board of directors assume responsibilities. Life goes on. There is no control. Nobody look at the budget. First thing is to look at the budget. First thing is to see what's your revenue, expenditure, how things can gain control. Nothing of that nature. So therefore, that is put in place. Fourth, enhance utilization of underperforming assets of state-owned enterprises. Every state-owned enterprise, every state enterprises, including the state banks, have so much property, so much assets not used. And country which has limited resources, asset utilization is key. And therefore, that has been put in place. Reframing refraining budget, and I am very encouraged with this, through supplementary provision as an amendment to the Appropriation Act. ST has to give within 2 weeks to the Parliament the amendment to the Appropriation Bill currently being debated in Parliament, preventing supplementary budget this year, which means this is all. Manage it. That's the discipline. Then, reduction in expenditure on fuel, electricity, communication, and other goods and services in government expenditure, because everybody is given not fuel in rupee allowance, in quantity allowance. So nobody cares what the price is. Nobody cares what the electricity costs. Nobody cares what the communication cost. So much technology has come in, but why worry? Everybody is on the phone, but nobody is answering the phone at the same time. So that's the expenditure we are saddled, and they are large, and that is being curtailed quantitatively and with alternative. Then extension of retirement by 5 years, partly to retain the wealth of human resources public sector is commanding in education, teachers, health, instead of recruiting and training in this kind of resource-constrained environment. It is good to ask the guys to share their experience rather than doing private practice in our local or in some other place. Oh, so this has to be there. And it still save ST. Instead of paying pension and salaries, now only salaries for another 5 years. And it will also save him at least 20-25 billion per year on gratuity and things like that, which he had to pay on the retirement. So it's simple, but hard decisions that had to be made. Otherwise, continuous reliance on retirees being hired as consultant, project directors, and all. 8, structural wage policy. Populist budget, having not granted wage increase since 2019, would have given a wage increase. But we need much more structured public sector wage policy, and he placed that responsibility on the National Pay Commission. Number 9, integrated results-based management system through 5 development committees. Honorable Minister has already set up in different areas, and new system to be monitored to see that the desired direction is being realized. Then we have large number of low-income people coming under Samurdhi, well-known welfare system in the country, more subsistence type of scheme. He wants to transfer that whole system to a rural development movement whereby each of the household is empowered to have much more solid household economy on their own. Then I'm happy to hear the state media is put on business focus model, and the responsibility has been there. And I am waiting to see ITN, Rupayani and other channels competing with others. Number 12, strengthen microfinance system and SME development, because there is only Samurdhi has sustainably maintained microfinance system. And then there is also an emphasis which last budget made, progress has not been made, but Minister is referring to SME-centric National Development Bank, because after NDB was privatized, there is no development bank in our country, no investment banking in our country, no venture capital, no capital for startups, no startup working capital. So recoveries cannot happen unless these infusions are made. So it's a reorientation. And last and most important lesson from the COVID was the insecurity in our society, in our international society, where our economy is integrated through tourism, through IT, through foreign employment, through investments, all kinds of activities. The exposure of our human resources, our populations to global viruses like this, and therefore government has dearly spent. Every single citizen has been vaccinated free of charge to make sure that everybody will get the benefit. Third booster doses are also ready to make sure the people's immunity, which is a public goods, is provided, and for that, a social security system. Country need it. It's not a tax. It can be either collected from income earnings or in terms of consumption. Which way you select the collection is a question of administration. So Minister has chosen everybody who have certain threshold, 120 billion annual turnover, pay 2.5% social security contribution, which is supplementing part of the public healthcare expenditure in this country. Let me also mention some revenue measures. Our revenue level, if you compare with our depressed GDP, because the denominator is collapsed, 9% of GDP now. It's aberration. Technically speaking, it is about 10-11% under normal conditions. However, with this 9% deficit, 9% revenue GDP ratio, government is running an 11% deficit. 11% deficit this year as reported because COVID-related expenditure, certain other public expenditure which has gathered heavy momentum, particularly because of the disruptions, and that has to be brought down. Now, therefore, 22 budget arrests public expenditure risk significantly. Now, revenue effort is essentially to supplement this effort, and government approach that in a very credible manner. First, this government, particularly under President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, after assuming office, implemented a simple tax regime. We got our income tax simple, we got our company tax simple, we got our VAT simple, we scrapped many nuisance taxes that were creating huge inefficiencies, corruptions, transaction costs, etc., all were done away. And then he also proposed special goods and services targeting specific items, not more than 10. Those are thing tax, and those taxes have been there, and that legislation is in place. So, most important thing is not to change that trust in taxes. Now, that tax system also, remember, has given enormous incentives, completely out of tax, zero tax, for IT, for agriculture, for livestock, for fisheries, and for in earnings, all tax-free. That has been protected. Besides, we have got export taxes down, SME taxes down, construction sector taxes down, and growth-oriented sectors have been created, much more conducive tax system. The corporate taxes were brought down to 24%. And then liquor, tobacco, entertainment, that sort of activities were kept at high rate. That's the structure. That structure has not changed, which means government is committed to continue this in the next. So we are entering to the third year. Then so taxation has to be from those who can afford to pay. That's the focus of 2020 tax policy. 80% of this country's revenue, if you analyze income tax data, there are reports done by IMF and various other experts which are available. 80% of our revenue come from 20% of the taxpayers, large taxpayers. That's the focus. So collect that. Why waste time on other 80%? My simple approach is that. And that 80% is not the 100%. And for that, Minister is proposing to consolidate the large taxpayer unit in the income tax department. Last year, workforce slowed down because of the COVID disruption to the officials, and also nobody likes this sort of modern tax system, but it has to happen. So, large taxpayer unit will be the trust. The government introduced Revenue Administration Management Information System in 2013 to bring the revenue on technology-based management, not people-based administration, but technology will decide. So RAMIS has to be in operation before April next year. And with the chairman ICTA and the DG TRC, this is one area we want to dramatize. Why should people have tax administration manually when the world has shifted to technology? One area is simple, transparent, online, non-manipulated compliance to create revenue. Then online payment platform through Lanka Clear, banking and public institutions, digital identification and related legal provisions to be incorporated in the income tax law itself, so that will bring the tax compliance as a mandatory requirement. Then there are reports that non-collected revenue in this country is 1.5% of GDP. That is approximately 200 billion rupees. Now, this is various ways of tax evasion in the country. Notice of assessments are issued by the department. Later on, assessments are settled bilaterally with the payment of penalty, but the evasion is regularized. Revenue is not collected, it's somewhere. And that has to be corrected, and technology will take care of this arrangement as well. Then, budget has already used existing provisions to use tax on to collect extra revenue from liquor, tobacco, which will eventually become part of the special goods and services tax, with a few other products coming into it. And that's the tax, that discretionary action, if at all, will happen. Rest of the tax, core taxation will remain. So, then in the custom, single window customs is the desire, and we are driving in that direction. A lot of work has happened, much more to be done, and transformation there. Then auctioning system of all the licenses, telecommunication licenses, these are revenue. These are good revenue, because right now these things are given not with much revenue. I don't know how those things are given. So it's going to be auctioning system, and the TRC will generate new revenue to the country. Then VAT on financial service. VAT on financial service has been raised from 15 to 18, and 25% surcharge on taxable profit over rupees 2 billion has been identified for this particular year because this is the sector doing well. So those who can afford can transfer part of it because the real economy is in trouble and they are not looking at it. So some government has to look at these things. So therefore, one-off taxes have been identified, and at 15 to 18% is not a bad financial service tax, considering real economy should even pay less tax. Technically speaking, real economy should not pay tax. It's the banks who make money and banks should pay tax. So 9% revenue GDP ratio with the revenue elasticity, that is, as economy grows, tax base has to grow, income has to grow, then the taxes will generate that aspect. Then base expansion, economy has to expand in all activities that the minister has covered. And these new revenue measures to provide 12.2% revenue GDP ratio in 2022 next year, and then grow up to 14.4% in 2024 and 17-18% of GDP by 26-27. That's the path. So technically speaking, revenue effort is double. Action is in place. Technology is brought in. Strict tax discipline is brought in. And it has to work like in other countries. Classic example is Pakistan. I mean, how leakages have been prevented by technology taking over the tax administration. Difficult. I will not underestimate the challenges, but this has to happen. Leadership has to be given. Then, on the expenditure side, operational expenditure can be met because currently operational expenditure, the budget is 17% of GDP. So 9% revenue, 17% recurrent expenditure. You are running a current account deficit, not budget deficit. Your budget, even the operational budget is in deficit. That will be even out and hoping to generate 3% savings within the revenue and operational expenditure with the 14 measures that have been taken with regard to expenditure control and 8 measures taken to augment the revenue measures. And proportionately, that will help fiscal deficit to bring down. The budget is turning to a savings because no point government asking people to save unless government save, because national saving come from the summation of private saving plus public saving. So public must also say they should not collect revenue and run deficit. They should collect revenue and save part of it to contribute to the national investment, what is called public investment. And that's the objective. And currently, government is spending, public investment is only 3% of GDP, despite all the work we are doing, 100,000 kilometer roads, water connection to everybody, and irrigation, all these things, is 3% of GDP. This country needs at least 6% of public investment to get the construction going, real economy going, fill the infrastructure gaps, and other economic activities. You need public investment, not public consumption. So public investment is to go up to 6% of GDP. Since government revenue operational expenditure is generating 3 to 4% savings. Public investment of 6% can be done even with the 2% budget deficit. And if that process continues, fiscal balances could be achieved, and that's the thrust of the budget. Now, 17 years successive fiscal deficit gave us debt. First, debt to GDP ratio of 100% registered in 87-88 when I was in the Treasury. Then, so 100% is not a new number to me. Then, in 90s, several times, 100, 98. These numbers doesn't make sense. Then, 2004 to 5 to about 15, numbers dropped to about 70, 75%. But then again, now back in 1999, 90%, now 101 or 2%. So it's whole your income is debt. Somebody is financing you. Now that path with a successive 5-year deficit reduction should bring the debt down. That's the debt reduction and the fiscal deficit reduction relationship this budget has linked. And in that process, there is also a shift in the mix. Too much foreign debt is dangerous. Out of foreign debt, too much sovereign bond debt, sovereign bond market debt is also debt, because rating company tells something, debt market guys will also tell something, then they will tell you to do certain things. So that is because too much vulnerability for such financial debt. So the plan is, last 2 years, it has been reduced by $2 billion. $15 billion sovereign debt now stand at 13. ST is ready with whatever stress to honor next January $500 million payment. In July, he has to pay another $1 billion. So another $1.5 billion will be paid in 2022. So 13 will drop to 11.5. And year after, another similar amount, and by that time we can bring sovereign bond market debt below 10. That's one approach. Bilateral debt is also not cheap. People think getting export credit and getting expensive projects is the way forward. President Rajapaksa has taken a very clear position. Debt finance project must be replaced from investment. Already progress has been made in the Colombo port, $800 million investment instead of $800 million loan. Now they are not in our books. It is in John Keel's and Mr. Adani's book, not our debt. Similarly, we have got power sector investment. We are not borrowing anymore from Japanese or Indians or anybody, because it's investor take risk. Then we have got Attygalle Expressway, because next month when the Kalani Bridge is open, you will be in Orugoda forever otherwise. So that connectivity had to happen. So Attygalle Expressway, $800 million BOT project, 35 years is now done. So those are investment, and that has to happen. Because certain things we can do, you guys can do, but certain things you all also can't do. You don't have technology, sometimes managerial skills, sometimes the foreign machinery, equipment and things like that. So we need this. So that marriage with domestic and foreign, like the way we have shown in Apparel, Apparel is not 100% domestic, but there are so many foreigners who have come here and have become domestic, and our domestic guys have gone to Bangladesh and have become foreign investors. That's how investment happened. So this process has been recognized in the budget, and the idea is while reducing debt to GDP to 75%, foreign debt component will be brought down to 25% by 2024. So it's relatively stable environment. Let me also turn your attention to the next topic I refer to, and Finance Minister has also gone in detail in his report, that is external account. That's the total national budget. This is government budget I outlined. This national budget, exporters are there, importers are there, tourism industry is there, foreign employment is there, bankers are there, everybody is there. And that is in deficit. So you all are also running deficit national external account, not only government, country. That is because we export $1, import $2. I don't know who give this money. So that equation has to be changed, and that picture is also being addressed. Here, aim is to put the external account on a sustainable reserve building path. We must have our own reserve, not borrowed reserve. You can go to some agency or some bank and borrow, and ST can give the dollars to central bank, and he can keep the rupees. But then next year he has to go to the central bank, give rupees and get the dollars and pay. That is not reserve management. This country actually has not managed its reserve throughout. So reserve has to be built by generating export earnings, tourism earnings, IT earnings, foreign employment, foreign service provisions, ports, airports, related works, and transform the external account also into a surplus, current account at least. Otherwise, every day you have to speak to ST or somebody to get $10,000, $15,000. That's the journey. It's not new. It has been there throughout. So when the going is good, you don't know the problem. But when trouble like COVID hit, you know the problem. So therefore, export surplus has to be created. So the aim is, this year I think this country can generate $12 billion export. Not a bad achievement. It's a remarkable achievement. I remember in March 2020, March or April 2020, when exporters came to my office and said, "Sir, export have collapsed. And we don't know what to do. Huge workforce, we can't pay all these bills, materials are not coming, complete lockdown." And remember, in March 2020, this country, instead of maintaining a regular $1 billion export, had only 300 million. That's the base. Now we are back in billion. In fact, October I thought figure will be less because of the restriction, but October figure was $1,100 million. And I am quite sure from the numbers I have checked, November and December will produce equal monthly export earnings. And this year, our exports of 12 billion is a reality. Now, idea is to bring this to $15 billion by 2024 and $19 billion in 2027. That's the roadmap. Now, in doing so, instead of doing tea and apparel, it has to be diversified exports. Because until the time I entered the university, Sri Lanka was a tea, rubber, coconut export economy. And we learn also about tea, rubber, coconut export economy. After I passed out and joined the central bank, and when the economy was open, apparel came into the picture. Now that also 50 years. I am also, my lifetime is gone. Tea and apparel can't transform a country. Apparel need to diversify. Apparel need to grow from low end to middle market products, which they are doing in diversified market. Similarly, tea has to grow, not $4 exporting, $4 a kilo tea exporting country status is not good. Because that was the price when I was a child. Now I'm almost in my last couple of years, and tea is still $4.50. Tea auctioning is still the same old auction. Tea brokering system is an old system. So systems have to change. In addition, rubber manufacturing, industrial products, electronics, computer and software items, locally brought, furniture manufacturing, all these things have to be reflected in our exports. And that's the path of export. But we also need to recomposite our imports. We need imports. We can't eliminate it because certain technology, certain material for manufacturing of export, machinery, equipment have to come. High tech, I don't think next 7 years, 8 years, we can innovate. That sort of thing. Sophisticated consumables and things like that have to come to add value to our exports. So those imports have to be permitted, but certain import has to be completely stopped. And President has taken a lead much before even the climate global summit started. He said, climate resilient development strategy is a future, the future. Organic agriculture. Difficult. Some are telling go incrementally. It has been going incrementally, but no organic. It's chemical organic. Organic and chemically same mix, but it had to shift. Shift is tough, but tough has to get going. So that's the organic agriculture, $2 billion. And chemical fertilizer imports, we used to spend $400 million, $300 million per annum. I am used to it because when I was ST, we sit with the fertilizer companies, we give the money to them, they open the LCs, bring the fertilizer, give it at subsidized price or market price or whatever it is, chemical. Today world is rejecting it. So President has taken a position organic agriculture is a reality. And having worked 2 years with him, by tomorrow, I'm completing 2 years in my work as Secretary to the President, and I have worked with him, having seen the commitment, sincerity, preparedness, sequencing, which he used in managing the COVID. I know for sure his management of transforming Sri Lanka into an organic agriculture will be a reality in the ongoing cultivation season itself. So that saves some. In addition, renewable energy. Now, those days we were waiting for oil because people were telling that we are now doing our investigations, reserves are there, we are going to bring it oil. Even if you discover oil, you have to pay for it, but still if it is, here you can use like Venezuela, ruin itself, their oil reserve. Now, today nobody is talking oil, nobody is talking coal. Today people are talking renewable energy. We have plenty of such resources: solar, water, wind, and the presidential desire is to have a front-loaded renewable energy generation investment plan to create 2,000 megawatts renewable energy in the next 2 to 3 years. So, take your money and invest. We are inviting foreigners as well. We are inviting everybody. School buildings, public places, even the Treasury now to cut its electricity bill can put 250 meters roof. Both sides will add to 500 meters solar. So Treasury runs only few days in the nights, so they can have electricity. That kind of a transformation from public buildings, public places, public offices, schools, hospitals, to residential solar transformation has to happen. And that investment is being fast-tracked. Procurement system, investment decisions will be made, and investment inquiries are encouraging, and we should not prevent it happening. Then, with those reductions, imports will still, this year imports will be probably around $17 billion. $17 billion imports, $18 billion imports will remain. So, roughly in the next 5 years, each year, with the export growing and imports remain around $18 billion level, trade deficit will remain around $7 billion. So that's the trade deficit. That is trade in goods. In that whole process, agriculture means not just farm production, but livestock, liquid milk, fisheries, plantation, all those activities will also be part of that agricultural development. Then we have trade in services. Currently, we have a marginal surplus in service account, trade in services. Those services largely driven by tourism, IT, and port and related services. Those are the three key things. Now, tourism has to grow. Everything is ready. Government has delivered its public goods premise, by vaccinating whole nation, and that vaccination has enabled to declare country as a fully vaccinated nation status. But still, risks are there. So booster vaccination will also begin, yet still the death rates are around 2024. Detections are around 500-600, which means 2.5% death rate is being reported. This has to be, President desires to bring this down to zero, which means next couple of months, continuous health surveillance is a must. So most of the good practices we develop has to happen, compliance has to be there, workplaces have to be in decent condition, respecting health standards, factories, these sort of events, weddings, functions, all in a responsible manner to make sure country will not reverse in 2022. So that risk is a risk you all have to individually manage. So, because sometimes we forget such risk. So, service account, the idea is to bring, with the increase in tourism, this year probably we will get about 100 million, which is very small amount, but we expect tourism to increase to 4 billion by 2024 and 5.5 billion by 2027. That does not mean that's the full tourism earning, because you guys are now traveling already. So you will also take part of this money out, and as a result, net earnings probably will be less, but still we have a positive tourism earning economy here. IT. Quietly, new generation expansion is happening. COVID probably helped, online and other activities. Currently, IT generate $1.8 billion. Aim is to raise it to $3 billion by 2024 and $4 billion in 2027. And the five IT technoparks, of which 2 are now under construction, one's commission, probably will create Sri Lanka's IT and enabling services, a new energy to pick up. Then ports, investors are promising that the West Terminal will be ready in 2 years. Transshipment cargo has to change the landscape of Colombo port. By that time, East Terminal may also come into the picture. So as a result, fairly large transshipment cargo should happen around the port, and the port-related earnings should also increase to about 3 to 4 billion earnings in 2024 and then 2027. Allowing payment for similar service that we engage for international services, service account will move to a surplus of about $5 billion from 1 billion current to 5 billion. Now that compensate $7 billion trade deficit, but we still have $2 billion gap. Still we have $2 billion gap, and that comes from remittance. So remittance, which is our human resource skills provided to other countries, this year probably $7.8 billion earnings based on the numbers I have, and will increase to $9.2 billion in 2024 and $10 billion remittance economy in 2027. That will create a surplus. So that's the buffer we have. And then there's another component in the external transactions that is connected to investment related. You all have borrowed, government have borrowed, for that interest has to pay. Investors have invested, for that dividend has to go out. Various other payments have to go out. Those payments will be around $2 billion throughout, because our external transaction will. So that can be accommodated with the surpluses in the trade of goods and services and remittance. With these things, we will have a reasonably comfortable current account surplus in the national external account. So this path is what Minister has outlined quite comprehensively through various measures taken, referred to in his speech. Then we have, from that current account position, largely currently at deficit, going to a surplus, we have to service our debt. Roughly each year, $4.5 billion debt service has to be made in the next 3-4 years. Now, these debt, as I mentioned earlier, partly to bilateral, our countries which have been given us various bilateral loans, partly to multilaterals, largely ADB and World Bank, and other $2 billion is to the market. So market, I explained how we plan to do. Bilateral also, I explained we are not planning for export credit funded expensive projects. We will go with much more longer term, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and several other large lending agencies, development lending agencies, to meet our foreign financing component of the public investment. So that is why even recently we signed $500 million World Bank loan for rural connectivity program. That's big money. Asian Development Bank is also having similar commitment. In fact, the recently visited World Bank Vice President, his experts, and Director General of Asian Development Bank who came here, they are very positive. But they want action. They want more efficient implementation. Project managements are not good. Contractors sometimes do not have the capacity. Sometimes delays. More delays means $500 million cannot be utilized. If you do fast, $500 million is like exports, because this money is for the local resources. So they are recommending various reforms in the construction sector, which we have to do. And Asian Development Bank last year dispersed, I think, about $700 million, highest. And this year I am pushing somehow to get equal number. And they are telling they can go up to $1 billion if the speed is maintained. So these are exports in my view, because these loans are very long term and local value content is very high, and therefore this has to happen. So this is the path we will undertake on this. Then Minister has mentioned his desire of creating a $10 billion reserves, financial resources. That's in 2027, and incrementally we have to go in that direction, hopefully reserve building through the external account which I explained. Now, this reserve building path is the only journey that we can have to stabilize the foreign exchange market, availability of foreign exchange. So this challenging time from low reserve to high reserve, we need to manage with the kind of measures that the government has taken. I'm glad that every single specific aspect has been identified, addressed, and relevant measures are being taken. Very soon, we are working with several parties to get a special finance act giving legal status to what we are talking, so that the officials, administrators are governed by that, on the free port concept, on the hub regulation concept, on the investment, the current account guarantees, comforts investors, reinvestment their money, Sri Lankan investors who have gone outside to bring their dividend investment in Sri Lanka, expatriate diaspora funds coming here, people who are working outside in Sri Lanka to come here and invest. That environment has to be legally created, and these assurances are being worked out. Third point is real economy. Real economy is what we are serious, because we have to transform national production in this country. Without production, the 70-year trade-dependent economy is more integrated to the rest of the world for sourcing materials and everything. But there is hardly any link to the local economy. Now, apparel industry, when it started, it was almost 60%, 70% import-dependent economy. But today, it is less than 50%, because most of the things are done here. And that model has to happen. Tourism has to be domestically linked, not to the import-dependent. Otherwise, earning tourism makes no sense. In fact, macroeconomists who came from the World Bank asked from the president himself, why your people are investing in Bangladesh, in Africa, in renewable energy, and in various other countries, and not here? Why? That is because that 70-year journey was not right. Our people have the capacity. They can invest here. And for that, investment protection has to happen in a credible manner. So this is why this budget has addressed some of those difficult challenges. In the real economy, transformation in the national budget. So that's why we have to focus national budget And if those actions take place, decentralize development expenditure, make expenditure much more efficient, expenditure on the ground, expenditure more easy to monitorable, expenditure is less, but at the same time, specific guideline have to be worked out. ST will have few sleepless nights to make sure those will go to real gap-filling rural development movements, and then transformation in the SOEs, particularly renewable energy means CB balance sheet will be changed. CB can go for green finance facilities if that is the case, and countries' renewable and organic agricultural transformation enable country to look for sustainable financing, green bond market instead of traditional sovereign bond market. These resources are now available. President has taken the country's agenda to the global stage. He has registered his commitment. That commitment is a new journey. That journey is what is reflected in the budget. So, in that sense, export diversification of goods and services, import substitution in areas which are viable, that is organic fertilizer manufacturing, for example, renewable energy related business, industry and services, construction, massive public investment activities will generate country-based 6% plus growth. So that 6% plus growth will be the growth that we are planning in the underlying growth target in the budget for the medium term in the national economy. Coming on to prices. Prices is also a crucial point, and right now various disruptions have occurred. Globally, price inflations are recorded high. United States itself is recording highest inflation number after 1990 or so. So if the US is having 6% inflation, next month it could be more. Globally it's high. Our inflation could also be high. Last 2 weeks rains may not get to vegetable. Fruits all have been damaged, disrupted. It will take time. But agriculture is also something which can bounce back quickly. And that's the food production drive. Honorable Minister is focusing almost immediately to address supply side constraint. It's not demand decide price now. It's the supply decide price situation. So let's address those issues. I will conclude my speech by referring to a few things. One, this is a budget, if I am to describe, has following characteristic. One, it's a commitment-honored budget. Tax policy, unchanged. Debt servicing, honored. Despite everybody is telling we can't pay, we pay. We pay. Take it seriously. Give a bad rating, but take the debt payment back. Non-debt creating public investment committed. Climate resilient economic initiatives preserved. Government to be a facilitator is a theme of the budget. Then progress. Look at the progress. Fight against COVID, a great success. Great success. enabling environment has been created for country to at least have this scale of work. Its risks are there, but the lessons learned from 3 waves have helped industry, government, healthcare services all to do much better than many other countries, and that's a progress. Then fight against drugs trade. It was almost a drug trading hub, and nation becoming victims of drugs use. Now this fight has also very without much publicity is going on, and it has curtailed, and still challenges are there, but it's much more lesser scale, crime much lesser. But corruption, another fight, continuous fight, is still there. It's not even sometimes begun. It's difficult. So, creating a corrupt-free society is not only a responsibility of the government, it's also a responsibility of the private sector. Chambers, if you stop, I can't take it. So you also motivate them. Pay taxes instead of paying anything else. Pay 25% surcharge. That's good, because country need corrupt-free environment, and President, I know, is deeply committed to see that journey. As an economist, pretty old, because I read old economics, and I am now in my village living, revisiting that economics on the real Adam Smith world economics, not this statistical economics. In those economics, rent-seeking society transformation is difficult, because drugs, there must be money behind. Corruption, there must be money behind. Custom reform, there must be money behind. Income tax reform, there must be money behind. BOI reform, there must be similar arrangements. Motor traffic, all these things means that money is also now traveling. That resistance is formidable. But that has to happen. That's the solid step in the transformation, and government remain deeply committed in that direction, as I see in the manner the budget has been structured. I would also like to mention best legal professionals in this country, not one or two. Almost all the top lawyers have been mobilized to undertake the needed legal reforms in this country, to put up modern legal infrastructure, not only buildings, but legal framework, legal reform, modernized legal system in civil, criminal, and commercial aspects of law to prevent law delays, and also to create a modern, predictable, stable, democratic investment regime in this country. Customs and revenue agency reform are being accelerated. Underperforming asset utilization law will be ready. It's almost ready. It will be presented to Parliament very soon to make sure any asset, the private or public or state enterprise, will be put into better use. Many land are not fully utilized in this country. At a time, land use is much important. And then measures identified in the Presidential Task Force to simplify rules, regulations will be incorporated into respective laws, and the work is being done in consultation with relevant secretaries. Procurement system, very archives. When we are talking e-procurement, our system takes 2.5 years. Government has only 4 years. So only one procurement transaction can be done. We are trying to modernize the procurement system and also new financial regulation system. So in conclusion, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening to me. I will be here for some time to ask any questions you like to ask from me, in addition to a very rich panelists who have been mobilized. You can ask from them. But to me, it is a country-centric, well-thought-out path to take this nation to a more advanced, poverty-free, middle-income country in the next several years. So let's consolidate the gains we have, not to talk negative sentiments all the time. Private sector should be active. I can't see activeness in private sector. They are individuals. Tourism is private sector business. Apparel is a private sector business. SME is a private sector business. Construction is a private sector business. There is hardly any government activities in those. Agriculture is private. Plantation is private. Be active. Promote yourself. Promote good sentiments. There are enough success stories in this country which outsiders see, but the insiders don't see. And now time to work together and make this journey happen, and then only next few months, this whole thing could be changed. So thank you.